on to other global stories and shifting our focus to the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Well, the US President Joe Biden has described Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's approach to the war in Gaza as a mistake.
Well, this is Biden's sharpest critique of how the Israeli government is handling the conflict with Hamas. Biden made the statement during an interview with Univision that was taped just days after Israeli military strikes killed 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers.
Also bear in mind that Hamas does not represent all the Palestinians. I think what he's doing is a mistake. I don't agree with his approach. I think it's outrageous that those 3 vehicles were hit by drones and taken out on a highway where it wasn't like it was along the shore. It wasn't like there was a convoy moving there, etc. So what I'm calling for is for the Israelis to just call for a ceasefire, allow for the next 6-8 weeks total access to all food and medicine going into the country.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that Hamas has been presented a very serious offer for a truce and hostage deal. The proposal was handed by Egyptian and Qatari mediators at talks in Egypt.
However, Hamas, in their response, said that the Israeli proposal on a ceasefire did not meet the demands of Palestinian militant factions, but it would study the offer further and deliver its response to mediators. On the eve of Eid al-Fitr, an airstrike on a residential building in Nusayrat refugee camp in the central Gaza Strip killed at least 14 Palestinians. The Hamas-run health ministry gave this figure. Other airstrikes were reported in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza and Rafah in the far south.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly flagged plans for a ground assault on Rafah, where more than 1 million Palestinians, displaced civilians, are holed up. Now, despite international pleas for restraint.
As Israel continues with its assault in Gaza, the British government has decided not to halt sales of arms to Israel by British companies. The statement was made by UK Foreign Minister David Cameron 6 months into the Israeli air and ground campaign in Gaza, triggered by Hamas' October 7th attack on southern Israel. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's government has come under heavy pressure to revoke licenses that allow arms exports to Israel.
We're talking about whatever part of.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani sends us this report from New York on why US President Joe Biden's reluctance to support a Rafah offensive does not seem to be enough to stop Netanyahu from going ahead with the plan. Take a listen.
Despite President Biden's reservations about the potential consequences of a large-scale operation in Rafah, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appears to be determined to proceed with the offensive. The Israeli government has a history of disregarding U.S. concerns and pursuing its own military objectives. And it seems that Netanyahu is willing to do so again in this case. Now, it's important to note that Israel says that it's absolutely necessary to root out a terrorist infrastructure in Gaza, including Hamas's leadership and military cache, also citing the threat from Iranian-backed groups.
Susan further explains the implications of the support that U.S. is giving towards a hostage deal in Gaza.
A U.S. support for the hostage deal in Gaza could help perhaps cool tensions in the region, particularly as it's near the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr. However, the deal would also require Israel to release Palestinian prisoners, which could be controversial domestically, notably for Prime Minister Netanyahu. Additionally, the deal would not address the underlying issue of the conflict, and the U.S. and Israel would still need to develop a day-after plan for Gaza once those hostages are released.